So hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we go and start second half of Reign from Heaven, also called as What If Leah Returned with a Child and Found Love in a New Wolf. So let's get started. Leah goes to a meeting and begins to learn some things. She didn't want to go, she thought, as she tugged her boots on. She didn't want to go at all. She wanted to stay in this hotel room and never come out. It wasn't even like she could ravish the rather attractive-looking, barely legal man in her room either. Not when Jude was in the crib next to her, but she did like him sleeping next to her. She liked his warmth, she liked waking up next to someone, and to be fair, she liked the fact that he was Sam's brother. She liked Embry, felt safe with him, but there was a devilish detail in the fact that it was Sam's brother that she was sharing her bed with, even if it was only sleeping. "Remind me why I agreed to this?" she said quietly. "Because you're a good sister," Embry said quietly. "Yeah, and my plane was delayed again. Washington weather." He flashed her another smile and then, "Why are you so nervous?" I think tonight things might change. What do you think? Sam might serve me with papers." He shook his head. Embry was leaning against the wall in a sky blue t-shirt and shorts, and he looked quite frankly like sex on a stick. He had Jude in his arms. Jude seemed to love him, but then again Jude was a happy baby. Always had been a happy baby. He won't do that. Trust me. Even Paul and Jared don't like how he is with you, and they're his biggest fans. But if you're serious about starting a relationship with your family, then there's this, I suppose. And if he starts, then you look at me or Seth or Jacob and we'll get you out of here. Jacob Black? Yeah, why him? Jake doesn't like Sam, Embry said with a wry smile. Let's just say it has something to do with a girl too, not Emily, he said, seeing the look on her face. But he doesn't like Sam. And he will do me a solid too. Trust me. You have more people in your corner than you want to admit. There was a pause as she stared at him and then, "All right, but I get a feel this is an intervention or whatnot and I am gone. Do you understand me?" "I do," he said quietly, and she got the impression that actually for the first time she might be able to trust someone. A man. Him. Leah. Seth came bounding out to join her, beaming with that bright smile. "Lo, Seth? Thought you were going? Plane delayed by 2 days. Hey buddy, come to your cool uncle Seth." "Seth, I don't. You wanna go and see the driftwood fire?" Seth said, looking at Jude, who was drooling onto his bare chest. "You wanna go and see the pretty colors?" And then he was gone. Embry touched her elbow for a second and then, "Let me get you a drink." She nodded, but then she turned and saw her mother walking over to her and realized the sneaky little shit had planned this so that she and her mother would get a chance to talk. "Wonderful. Hi," she said awkwardly. "Hello," her mom said, smiling. "Seth looks like he is having fun." "Yeah, he does," she said, smiling, watching as Seth perched Jude on his hip and seemed to be telling him something that made his baby face crease with laughter. "Seth would make a great dad one day," Leah said quietly, watching the two of them. "Yes," her mom agreed. "He has this wonderful capacity to love. He gets that from your father. He could love like a butterball, oozing it out of his pores." Leah opened her mouth to say that she didn't remember her father quite that way, but she shut it again. It wasn't fair on her mother for her to be like this so soon after they had put their father in the ground. For a moment the two of them watched Jude and Seth, and then, "He would have made a great grandfather," her mother said finally, and there was a hitch in her voice that Leah didn't know how to address. "I know," she said finally. Her mom sighed and then, "I wish things had been different," she said finally. "And I know that is on me. I'm the parent. It was my job to make you feel like you had a home, not that you had to run away from it in the middle of the night. And I get that you want an explanation. Maybe tonight you will get one. I just, when you find out the truth, don't hate us too much. Your father, it cost him his life, it's cost me my life with him. I don't want you to go through life not knowing what love is, or for that little boy to not know that he has family who love him. I really do want a relationship with you." "Why did you choose her then?" Her mother sighed, but it was less patronizing than it had been previously. She seemed to be genuinely thinking of the right answer, and then, "It wasn't intentional for me to choose her," she said finally. Leah watched her as she watched Emily uncover food. I wasn't when I found out the whole story. I was more understanding than I was upset. And if I am being honest, I was kinda glad she had Sam. I just never thought he was the right man for you. I know you loved him, I know you were gearing up for a life with him then, and I didn't want that for you. I wanted you to go out into the world and see it, you know. I never got that chance. And Emily and I were getting on better. You and I were arguing, and I know it was normal teenage mother and daughter stuff, but we were arguing, and it was easy, I guess. Then when it all hit the fan and she was mauled, I thought she was my sister's kid. You know I had to be there, and it just got easier. I know I let you down. I know I let you down, Leah. I stopped being a mom to you when you needed me to be the mom the most, and I am sorry for that. I gave up. I didn't know moms could do that, Leah said finally. Her mom laughed self-deprecating. Honey, that is because you are a much better mom than I am, she said, smiling. I need you now, she said quietly. I need you now, Mom. If you, I am doing everything right, but you and I both know that I cannot build a life here. There's too much of the big world outside and too little here, and I know I opened the door for Sam, but I want to control it as best I can. So if you want to build up our relationship again, then I need you to be in my corner when he makes his move. Because he is making a move. He won't have his son without a father, and I lie awake at night terrified that Emily and him are going to push me out like they did the last time. I was cheated on, Mom, and I came across as the cold-hearted bitch who couldn't understand how happy Sam and Emily was. I was expected to move aside and smile gracefully. I won't do that with Jude. Her mom looked at her for a long time and then, you grew up, Mom. Leah, by the end of tonight you will have the answers to the questions, well, most of them, and then come hell or high water I will be by your side. And that, she knew, was all she was going to get out of her mother tonight. Sorry, Seth said, interrupting them. But someone's fussy. He held out Jude and Leah took him onto her hip, but he didn't seem to want to calm down. Hey, she said, throwing her keys to Embry. Can you get his blanket out the car? Embry nodded. Her mom sighed. I owe his mother an apology, she said quietly. I judged her too when she was about your age doing her best. And she did raise a very nice young man. Leah didn't know what to say to that. Embry came back with the blanket and then very gently he tucked it around Jude's body. Hey kiddo, he said softly, running one finger down Jude's cheek. You sleepy now, huh? She laughed, looking up at him, and she thought in that moment like a lovesick fool that she was ready. She was really, really ready to move on. She wanted him. Fuck, she wanted him so badly. What did it matter really when it was only 2 years between them? What did it matter that he was Sam's half-brother? It didn't. She wanted him so badly she thought she might ache with it. Never before, not even with Sam, had she fallen this fast or this far. He looked down at her face and smiled, and she thought, fuck it, she was going to kiss him, and then, are you fucking kidding me? She turned to see Sam looking at them. Embry huffed out a smirk and then turned and grinned. It was goading, and she had half a mind to tell him to stop, but then she saw that Sam was stalking towards her and that he had shoved Jared aside. Seth materialized at her side suddenly, his face filled with a feral kind of warning. Leah? That was Jacob Black, and he too did not look pleased by this sudden turn of events. Also with him was some brunette girl that she was sure was Charlie Swan's daughter, who looked with resigned fear as if she knew what was coming next and was preparing her heart for the attack. Leah, give me the baby, Jacob said quietly. Give me the baby right now. She stared at him as he tugged Jude out of her arms, but then she got a second to turn, and then Embry was blocking her. Sam was right in his face and he was shaking. Come on then, Embry whispered. Come on, you fucker, you've been asking for it. Come on, you're gagging for it. She had no idea what the hell he was going on about, but she didn't like this. She did not like this at all. Sam, Quill said, coming to join them. Sam, you cannot do this here. You just take. Sam hissed at his half-brother. Everything that is not yours. Embry laughed. Samuel, you let her go, not me. I'd have never let her go. I am right here. Nobody listened to her. His my son, Sam hissed. You don't get to play dad because you're the better option. Embry laughed, cold, high and calculating. So you can come in and pick him up and use him when you want, make yourself feel like a good man again, cause you clawed off half of Emily's face, and so far you've got nothing to show for it. There was a gasp as everyone took a breath. Sam was shaking now so fast he was blurring. She reached out and took Embry's hand, and she didn't even know if he felt her. Leah? It was Paul, and his hands were on her shoulders. Leah, darling, we need to move back. But she didn't want to pull back. She didn't want to pull back and leave him. I don't. Leah, step back now, Seth snapped. Sam, back the fuck off. Embry, man, I don't know what you are planning to do, but this pissing contest isn't helping. But Embry was smirking still. Ain't nice, is it? He whispered into Sam's face. Everyone looking sideways at you and wondering, looking down their noses at you and seeing you as less than human. Welcome to my world, bro. Or better yet, welcome your fucking fiancés to my mother's. Sam roared. Actually tilted back his head and roared. He was screaming now, and Embry sniggered, pushing him back. He turned and then looked at Leah. Sorry, he said, and she thought for a second that he actually meant it, and then his mouth came down on hers and his kiss was light and soft and left her aching for more. She locked down her knees because she was a motherfucking woman, not some lovesick twit, and then Sam was gone, and in his place was a wolf. A wolf. A fucking wolf. Embry ducked the launch Sam made to him and staggered, turning on his bare feet, and then he leapt over the table and with a roar he was gone, too, body transforming into a wolf. The two wolves that had once been Sam and Embry pawed the ground for a second, and then they were scrapping and fighting, teeth snarling and claws digging into the forest. Paul swore, stripped off his shirt, and then he was gone too, a big black streak of animal. Seth dithered and then went too, leaving her sat on the ground as the smaller wolf that had once been her brother went bounding off into the trees, leaving Leah sat in the ground, hands deep in the mud to keep herself grounded. They were wolves. Embry. Sam. Seth. They were what was even the word? Someone was helping her to her feet and she saw that it was her mom. Jacob had Jude and he was chatting with the swan girl who shot her something that might have been a smile if she was capable of it. Instead it looked like a grimace. Jude had his blanket over his head and Jake was playing peekaboo. Her son had not seen anything. She turned to see her mom brushing her hair back from her face. Oh darling. Leah opened her mouth but she didn't know what to say. She didn't think she could say anything, speak, think, feel, all of it was gone. Instead she felt her eyes roll back in her head and she got one last look at the stars, and then before she fainted completely she thought she heard in the distance the sound of a wolf howling. Leah learns the truth. Part 1. She came to and her head was pounding like it had done that time when she and Emily had been 15 and they had climbed out onto the edge of the cliffs with a bottle of vodka snaffled from some older cousin of Emily's who had never abided by the res rules of no drinking. That had been the first time she had seen the power of the waves below and thought she had wanted to jump. Cliff diving was all well and good until you had a stomach full of booze in you and nothing else. Leah had learnt that lesson the hard way and she had not even jumped. But back to the original point. Her head was throbbing when she forced her eyes open. She looked up at the crack in her old bedroom ceiling and, wait, what the? She sat up so suddenly the flare of pain in her back and head was so intense she nearly vomited. She nearly staggered for a second, stunned into silence by the velocity of the pain and confusion that had gripped her, and then she sat up in her old bed and it was like she remembered. The fight between Embry and Sam, Jude, Embry, and Sam both turning into wolves. Giant fucking wolves. Werewolves. Leah made it to her old bathroom before she was sick. She gagged into the sink and then methodically looked at herself in the mirror, taking stock of the sallowness of her skin and the way her hair felt flat. She looked at herself and thought ironically she had not liked this since when Jude was a newborn and sleep had been this thing that she had dreamt about in every waking moment. She sighed and went through the motions. Embry and Sam were werewolves and her son was were. She nearly gagged on her toothbrush at that and she rinsed out her mouth and stomped down the stairs, nearly tripping over the damn sneakers on the floor. Seth glad to see that some things never changed. She righted herself and then she turned and ran into the kitchen where her mother was there with fucking Shania Twain on the radio making breakfast, and Jude was there in a high chair bashing a baby spoon around to the beat. Her mother was beaming as she scrambled eggs and her hair was loose. She was in a shirt that was absolutely their father's and a pair of loose shorts, and she was beaming as if she had never been widowed. Leah, watching at the doorway, was struck by how young she seemed to be. She had never thought of her mother as young, never thought of her as a young woman with thoughts and ideas and dreams. She had been like so many girls on the reservation, married out of high school to the high school boyfriend and pregnant before the college term started. Very few women made it out of here. Rachel and Rebecca had never grasped how special they were in terms of the fact that they had gotten off this res and far away, and with Rebecca it had been a full thing considering she had left to be with a man who was about as Native American as Kevin Costner. Leah, watching from the doorway, wondered if her mother had ever even thought about life outside of the house she had grown up in and the house that she had married into. She did wonder about that. Her mother turned and saw her and smiled. Hey, hi, so you are okay? Leah shot her a long look. That a trick question, or are you actually asking? Her mom nodded and then, Leah, surprised you don't have Emily round, she said, and then she could have kicked herself because it was rather nasty of her to say so. Her mom and her had problems, but it wasn't worth being mean over. Not that mean anyway. Sorry, she said, seeing her mother's face fall. Sorry, that was harsh. I didn't. You can say it, her mother said finally. God knows, Leah, you are not saying anything that isn't true. I have let you down. I know that. Leah nodded and then looked at Jude. Has he been? Oh, delightful, her mom said, and she was practically jumping up and down at this. The perfect morning, he's been the perfect little helper. God, Leah, she trailed off beaming. He's the most perfect little boy ever. And none of it is down to Sam. She was practically radiating a kind of smugness that made Leah, despite the situation, want to laugh. I'm surprised you didn't fight Dorothy off on the way here. I can take that woman. And besides, she has Emily to tend to her. Her mother sighed and then, I suppose, she said carefully, you have a few questions that you want the answer to. That would be nice, yeah, Leah said in what she knew was a totally sardonic tone. Her mother nodded as if this didn't surprise her whatsoever. I suppose I have to tell you about it from the beginning. I know your father told you the stories of our tribe, but I also know that you didn't believe that they were real. Well, they are. Leah paused and then she sat down. She wanted to give the appearance of grace, but then again it was also an element of the fact that her knees had gone before she could lock them down, and so she sat down at the table. It was almost reminiscent of when she had come downstairs to find her mother and father with their heads close together, and then her father had broken the news that Emily was awake and had moved in with her ex-boyfriend, but it was going to be okay because Sam was understanding that this would be awkward for her. Yeah, that old chestnut. Tell me everything, she said, and her mom nodded. And for once she did. It took Leah several moments to respond. Actually, she thought she might be going into shock. Her mom had enough time to pick up her baby and then put him down for a nap on the floor. She was dangling her car keys at him to soothe him when the movement came back into Leah's legs, and when she came back into the kitchen with Jude asleep next door, it was to find Leah vomiting into the sink. Oh honey, are you fucking kidding me? Her mom made a shushing noise and pointed to where her son was asleep and then, honey, I know that it's a lot, believe me. Who? Sam, Jared, Paul, Jacob, Quill, Colin, Embry, Seth. Leah felt her knees lock down. Seth is, yeah, a werewolf? Christ, it was even a hard word to think, never mind say. Her mom nipped her lip between her teeth. Leah, I know it's a lot, believe me. When I found out, and I have only just found out, I nearly tore my hair out. Your father, he didn't think to tell me. I guess he hoped it had passed Seth over, but anger is the trigger, and Seth. She paused and then seemed to gather a courage that Leah didn't have. Sam had announced his engagement to Emily and Seth lost it, her mom said finally. He didn't mean to do anything, but he came home and your father, he made a comment about the wedding and that I had been helping, and Seth, that was when he lost it. I think he's always felt that the shock helped trigger your father. Did it? No, her mom said emphatically, and Leah knew instinctually that she'd had this conversation with Seth so many times it was hard to count. No, Leah, he had heart issues behind the scenes for a long time. He ate his weight in fish fry, and I knew he was drinking heavily at the end too. He hid it well, but I don't think that he coped with how you left, and no, I am not blaming you or Seth, she said quickly. Your father and I had a lot of problems. I didn't realize that he had known Embry's father was Joshua Yulee and he had ran interference. I also didn't know about the imprinting thing either. She shook her head. How so? Does that mean that the Cullens are? Yes, and Bella Swan is, isn't she? She wants to be one, her mother said flatly. Jacob has an idea that he can stop her, but I don't think he can. It's her life at the end of the day, but then again, if she wants to throw it away, nobody is going to stop her. That's the great tragedy of making decisions so young. She shook her head and tapped her nails on the edge of the table again. Jude, Leah said flatly. It had been there hanging in the middle of this conversation like a grenade with the pin pulled out. Seth had this gene, which meant Leah did, and so did Sam. You didn't have to be a doctor to figure it all out. Her mom nodded. Is he going to be? She couldn't say the word. She really could not. I don't know, honey. I think the thing that triggers is a threat to the tribe. So when the Cullens came back, Sam, he was already locked and loaded, ready to go, and that day he went missing. He had seen his father and that had set him off. He spent 3 days in the woods. I remember. And then Paul and then Jared. Embry was a comment made about his mother. Quill was, I don't know what Quill was. Jacob was delayed because of Bella Swan, but I think he was jealous and that, and then Seth, God only knows with the little ones. Jude should be fine. It doesn't kick in until you're older, and that's if he's here, and the Cullens are still here, which somehow I don't see. We went through nearly 50 years without an incident. There is no need to panic. Leah, who had at that point been holding her head in her hands, looked at her mother in a state of disbelief. Really? That's what you're going with? No need to panic? Her mom smiled. Yeah, I guess it's all I can do. Looking at her now, Leah could see how exhausted she was. She had thought it was the usual grief over her father, but she could see her mother and she knew that she was up half the night with worry over Seth too. So the vamp, oh god, there is a newborn army ripping apart Seattle, I believe her mom said, as if she too could not believe that she was saying this. I think that there is a plan, then hopefully they can stop. If you try hard enough not to lose your temper at the littlest things, then you can stop. Seth does his best, he doesn't really get angry anymore, usually Sam has to be the trigger. She smiled and twisted her wedding ring around her finger. Seth was always such a happy baby, she said quietly. Leah really did not know what to say to that. Is that why Sam wants him here? She said, looking to where her son was sleeping. Because of this? I think it's Sam's reasoning, her mother said quietly. But in truth it's deeper. Sam, for all his faults, and I know he has many and I will not defend him, but he grew up without a father, same as Embry, and I think Sam has always wanted to be one. Emily told me as much. I think there is an element of this, but Leah, I think we both know it's bigger than that for him. Leah nodded, distracted. She did know that for Sam he had always wanted children. Had wanted them straight out of high school. Had never so much as thought about college, just getting married and having a family. Dorothy had always raised him to believe that traditional life was better, and Leah had known it had been a sense to prove himself better than his father, that he had to be better than his father because the alternative was, well, Joshua. She swallowed down the bile in her throat and went back to the most important thing. Jude is safe? Yes, her mom said, and there was an undercurrent of steel in her voice. Jude is perfectly fine, he is not going to turn into a wolf with a little temper tantrum. I would tell you that as your mother and that little boy's grandmother. If I thought there was any risk, I would tell you. I have buried one man I love, I do not intend to bury anyone else. Again there was an undercurrent there that told Leah she'd had this conversation with Seth and more likely Sam, and that was why her brother was not in the front line. And if that's the case, then when this is over they can stop, right? I believe so. So I can leave here? You mean with Embry? Leah didn't say anything, but her mother smiled at her gently. Oh sweetheart, I can see the way he looks at you. I can see the way you look at him. I like the boy. I have said many things I regret about his mother because I didn't understand the full story, and I will have to own up to them, but I like the boy. He's good for you, I can see it, and he adores you. You don't care that he's younger? Leah, there is 5 years between your father and I, and there was nearly 7 between Billy and his wife. To say nothing of Bella Swan dating a man who was born when the Queen Victoria was alive. Age doesn't bother me. God knows the boy is legal and looks about 29, so there is that. I do like him. I've been harsh and his mother is going to rake me over the coals for it, but I do like the boy. Always have. And I can see that you like him. Leah, this information is intense, I know, but please do not let it get in the way of your happiness. The imprint. And there was that word again. What is an imprint? She asked, and the look on her mother's face just fell. There was a knock at the door and her mother turned to stand and open it, and Leah saw Embry standing there in the hallway looking very hangdog. What's an imprint? She asked before he could speak, and she saw the look on his face. And just like that, she knew that this had been what he had been afraid of. Leah learns the truth, part 2. Embry looked at her and Leah read the panic in his face. She read the panic and she read the fear and she read the steady acceptance. If there was something that was going to go wrong, he had banked on it being this. The wolf thing, he had been fine with the imprint thing. That had been what he had been afraid of. And that set her teeth on edge. What is an imprint? She repeated. Her mother looked between the two of them and then, I am going to check on the baby, okay, she said softly. She straightened and gave Embry a long look as if she was telling him something, and then, because she remembered no doubt that the game was up, I want no blood on my carpet, and then she was gone. Leah had to say it wasn't terribly reassuring that she would make it through this conversation alive, it had to be said, and then her mother was gone. Are you all right? Embry asked. Leah raised an eyebrow. She did not have the best of tempers, it had to be said, even without this news being dropped on her, but she had also dealt with being a single parent to a newborn alone, and so she was able to remain calm under intense pressure. So she told herself now, not thrown up yet, she said quietly. Embry nodded and then, can I sit down? She nodded and he sat down and looked at his hands. I shouldn't have done that last night, he said quietly. Goaded Sam like that. He and I have our own shit, and I know that dragging you and Jude into the middle of it wasn't fair. I know that you didn't deserve that. He was thinking some shit that was driving me mad and I snapped. I wanted to hurt him, you see, and I may have hurt you in the process, and you've been hurt enough. I hate that I hurt you even for a little bit. I hate it and I am sorry. She blinked. Maybe it was a new thing due to her relationship with Sam, but truth be told, she was not used to people apologizing for hurting her. And in the space of 24 hours her mother had done so, and now him. Which, don't get Leah wrong, was gratifying, but if she was being honest and her hands were being held to the fire, neither one of them were really who she wanted an apology of. How much do you know? Everything. Aha. Just not the imprinting thing. It's a wolf thing, she said, cringing slightly when she said the words. Sort of. It's hard to explain, and it's fuck Leah, it's gonna be really painful when you imprinting. It's like destiny in a way. It's the wolf inside you telling you that this person is your soulmate, and I know how that sounds, believe me, I know how it sounds when I say soulmates and destiny and shit, but your world becomes focused down to her, or him. I suppose it doesn't discriminate, it's just the way that the magic that flows in us works. Will you look at someone and they become your world? He shifted his chair forwards and she doesn't shift backwards, and he looks at her with his coffee-colored eyes burning with unnamed emotion. She finds that she wants to drown in those eyes. Despite the fact that she said she was done with any man not her brother or son, she finds she wants to throw herself at him and trust him to take care of her. So how many? Sam was the first, he says in a clipped tone, and she pauses and then she gets it. She stands up suddenly so fast that he blinks, looking up at her. Sam did this imprinting on Emily? When she came down that first time, when he looked at her, and the magic of stop talking, she said flatly, and Embry nodded, looking miserable for a second. Leah turned around and bent over the sink. She didn't vomit though, she felt something churning inside of her. Eventually, when she knew it wasn't going to happen, she turned back around and found that he was still sat there and still looking at her. So to recap, she said quietly, Emily came down that weekend and Sam was already a wolf. He looked at her and then suddenly he was in love with her at the drop of a hat because his magical wolf told him so. She shouted that last bit, uncaring that it would probably scare her son, and Embry bit his lip. There was a cry from the next room, but Leah ignored it. She was shaking suddenly, and then Embry stood up, kicking the chair to the side, and his hands, hot and huge, were on her face. Calm down, he said firmly. Leah, you gotta calm down. She wanted nothing more to do than to give in to the anger that was coursing through her veins, but she knew somehow that if she did, she wouldn't be able to escape. She would go down a road that would see her and Jude trapped here, and so she took a breath and then another, and then dropped her head to his bare chest, and uncaring of how it might look, she curled her fingers around his shoulder, and Embry pulled her into a hug as if he wanted nothing else other than to do this for the rest of his life. And suddenly she was crying. I loved him. I know you did, honey. I was going to marry him. I was his. Recycled my fucking ring. Embry snorted, and then he shook his head, and when he pulled back he was holding her face in his hands and smiling. Good thing you got out when you did then, wasn't it? He said, and she found that she was laughing even though she was still crying. Well, yeah, would have been great if I had been married to him. Embry's thumb reached out and brushed away her tears for a second, and then, others have done it too, he said quietly. Jared has a girl, Kim. It's like every high school fantasy come true with that one. Girl likes boy. Boy ignores girls, and then boy comes back from a 3-week werewolf trip and then imprints. She thinks it's like all her dreams come true at once. And then Quill, he dithered for a second, and then, you know what, I don't even want to get into Quill because I don't understand it. But then, Jacob and Bella? Embry laughed. Fuck no, he said harshly. Jake would sell his soul if that was true, but Bella Swan chose her side a long time ago, and she doesn't plan to defect. She's the vampire girl through and through. His face did a complicated twist as if he didn't realize that she already knew that they existed. And me. For a second she was staggered. Oh, he had fallen in love with someone. Fallen in love with what, someone else? What was that saying? Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. It was just that she had really thought. Oh, she said quietly, pushing his hands away. Embry let them drop to his sides, and he watched her with the air of a man about to enter his own agony. Oh well, that's a good, I suppose. Nice for you and for her, but look, I think what you've been doing with me has been really shitty if you've had someone in the background all along. I mean, what are you on about? He asked. You just said you had a soulmate out there, that you had met this imprint shit, and I meant you, Embry said, giving her a look that said that really should have been obvious. To anyone else it would have been, but to Leah it wasn't. For a moment the two of them stared at each other, and then she shook her head. Embry threw her a look that was half anguished, as if her slow shaking of the head was what he had been desperately hoping for, but there was nothing in his eyes that told her that he was surprised by her reaction. I don't, you cannot me. Yeah. I was hell, Leah, I was gone on you before you left the first time, believe me, this is just, I was already yours back then, though I know you didn't even see me. This is just some fucked up cosmic way of telling me what I already know, and you're Sam's brother. So he snapped back and she could see the rage in him now. So, what has that got to do with it? Leah, my father is a deadbeat. I was raised by my mother who raised me on food stamps, going hungry half the time because she was thrown out of her own house and tribe by my grandparents. What the fuck does being Sam and I do not have a relationship? He fumed and then he was back against the wall suddenly shaking and she watched him as he ran a hand through his hair and scraped it down his face. For a moment she stared at him and then, me? Embry nodded and then he took one step forwards and then another and then he paused when he caught the look that was no doubt splattered across her face. Leah, you imprinted on me, she said finally. You and me. There was a long pause and she looked around her kitchen and not for the first time wondered how in God's name this had become her life. Does Sam know? Yeah, well, Leah thought scathingly, that did explain a bit. Sam was never good with sharing things that had been half of the fun back when she had thought their relationship was good and not utterly toxic. Leah? He was reaching out to touch her and she flinched backwards. She couldn't help herself, it was almost ingrained at this point, the instinct to run and protect. Embry flinched back too, as if she'd smacked him hard across the mouth, and for all the money in the world she wanted to take it back, but her heart was hammering too much in her chest to say anything. She couldn't even think about getting the words out. Lee, I would never, ever hurt you, you have to know that. I need a minute, she said, looking down at the chair she was gripping. Embry blinked. I don't. I need a fucking minute, because in the space of 3 hours what happens if I leave? Am I even allowed to? I am not going to chain you to the bed and make puppies for me, Embry snapped, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and she turned and retched into the sink, unable to stop herself. It was too much, this idea of soulmates, and imprints, and werewolves and vampires, and she turned on the tap to wash out her mouth only to hear a distressed little whine behind her that she refused to admit had tugged on her heartstrings. Can you go? She said finally. She could not know, she would not turn around to look at him. God, did he have to sound so shattered? Please, she said, not looking at him. I need time, I need to think, I need to this isn't I didn't want this, she said, turning around to look at him and almost wishing she hadn't. I had a plan. Get in and get out, pay my respects to my dad, see Seth, maybe spit on Emily and set fire to her wedding dress, but whatever, my plan did not involve this. Embry, I am going after this, I have to. I can't live here and this isn't, she was trying to tell him, but the words weren't coming out. Embry looked at her and he didn't look like the man that he was acting like, he looked like the boy that ultimately he was. God knows what she looked like. All right, he said slowly. I will go. He looked around as if he had just survived a bomb blast. He looked around at her and then away and then back as if his thoughts were scattered all over the floor, and then, fuck it, he muttered, and he took one step forwards and then another, and then his mouth was on hers and it was hot and it was unending, and for one moment she kissed back, feeling like she had come alive again. Embry didn't kiss like a kid, he kissed like a man, like he wanted to reach in and take her apart inch by inch until he had invaded her fucking soul, and for all that she was standing in her mother's kitchen she wanted him to take her to the floor and take her apart inch by glorious inch. No, it had never felt like this with Sam. He took a step back when she needed to breath, and then he pressed his burning forehead forever, and then he took her clenched fist and flattened it out one finger at a time before he put the hand to his heart. I will go, but how you are feeling now is how I have been feeling for years, not about the shit going on outside but about you. I have liked you since I was a teenager whose balls hadn't dropped. I have loved you since you came back, and I know that I will go on loving you until the day I die. And I can die, Leah. I can give this up, it just takes time. And I will always be here when you're ready. I will go now if I have to, but I will always be here when you're ready for me. So you call me. 'Cause you never find me shacked up with someone else as long as you walk the earth. And then with another furious burning look he was gone, and she was left standing there in the kitchen shivering with the loss of the heat of him. Her mother gently opened the door, Judge asleep on her hip. For a second she stared at Leah and then she pulled Jude closer. I think she said quietly. This calls for wine. It's 9 in the morning, Leah said flatly. Aha. Bottle is in the fridge. And with that Leah burst into tears. And in the distance, a wolf howled. Leah goes looking for answers off the one man who damn well owes her some. It wasn't totally intentional to go and see Sam. Well, maybe it was. They were heading towards this fight since she had stepped foot off the plane. The only thing that had derailed it was this revelation. This imprinting werewolf, vampire catastrophe that they were in, that she was now in. And now she wanted answers. There was a part of her, a really big part of her, that was still the teenager that she had been 19 and ready to sign her life away to one man, to give up college, to stay on the res and make things work out of scraps. That girl was dead, but she damn well had some questions before she went.
She had to get answers after all. What other choice did she have?
She had been kept in the dark by Sam and men like him for too long. Or that was what Leah told herself as she walked to Emily's house. Emily's house, she thought, as it came into view. What a contradiction in terms. The house Emily lived in with Leah's ex-fiancé. She was pissed. Shoot her. She resisted the urge to throw something at the neat flowerbeds and waited by the decking. A part of her that lived on pride couldn't believe that she was here, and the other part of her that had left her son with Seth and her mother, after she had downed a glass of wine in quick succession, wanted answers. The door opened and, "Leah? Not you," she said to Emily. "Where is he?" "Who?" "Oh, don't be coy," she said to her cousin. "The father of my child, my ex-fiancé, the man who I lost my virginity to, the brother of my imprint of whatever the hell that is, where the hell is." "Right here, Lily." She turned around and there was Sam looking at her. "Call me that again and I don't care what you can turn into. I will have you killed," she said slowly. Sam raised one eyebrow and then smiled as if he had expected this. Now looking at him in the critical way that she did, she could see the resemblance to Embry and through the two of them their father. Christ, she thought viciously, it must have driven Dorothy mad. Though then again, knowing her once upon a time mother-in-law, if Joshua knocked on the door tomorrow she would probably take him back. "You want to go for a walk or do you want to talk inside?" Sam said quietly. "Walk," she said, and she pushed herself off the decking and Sam nodded. He winked at Emily, who had the nerve to smile back, and then they were off silently, walking side by side until they reached the top of the cliff. "You know, if this is your way of trying to push me off, I will survive that." "No," she said, and then she looked over the edge at sharp rock and high crashing waves, and then, "Will you? Don't sound so hopeful, Leah, will you?" She shrugged. "Where's our son?" "My son," she said through gritted teeth, "is with his uncle." "So you trust Seth with him but not me?" It wasn't stated as a question, it was stated as a fact. The sky was blue. Sam loved Emily, Embry was a werewolf, and Leah trusted her brother with her son but not his father. She scowled at the implication and then she dragged her eyes off the waves to look at him. "Yes, I do." Sam nodded as if this was an interesting fact, nothing more. "What, no anger?" "Anger doesn't work with me anymore." "You've seen Emily's face. Call that my rock bottom moment. I've been working to keep my temper controlled. Even in the face of this almighty mess we are all in." Leah didn't know what to say about that. "Would you rather me not have brought him?" "I don't know," Sam said easily. "I don't get me wrong, I'm glad you did. And I am glad everything is out in the open, but I don't, Leah, you had to know what was gonna happen the second I saw him. I mean, you had to know. You know me. You knew that there was no way I was ever going to be my dad. You knew I would want to be in his life, and I mean, would you have turned up with him the night before the wedding?" It was a rather nice image, she had to say, but she shook her head. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I did. I knew you didn't want to be your dad. I didn't want this." She gestured between the two of them. "It hurts for me still, you know. You took the best parts of me and you broke them, and you didn't give me a reason. You took my family." "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did," she said flatly. "Sam, you took my family. You took my mother and my father. You slept with my cousin, and that was what? 2 weeks after you'd broken up with me? Hell, Emily was only out of the hospital a week and then you told my dad, or my dad figured it out and he told my mom, and suddenly, well, what did it matter about my broken heart? You were the golden boy of the council with your little wife all picked out for you. Do you have any idea of what you took from me? It wasn't just my parents, hell Sam, the last year of my father's life, it was everything else. It was my security, my peace, my happiness, my future, my home, and you have never once said sorry for any of it." "I did say sorry, only when you got caught." For a second he watched her and then he looked out over the waves. "Leah, it wasn't intentional hurting you. I never wanted you to feel like you had to run out. But it made your life easier when I did, didn't it?" He seemed to tremble for a moment and then he nodded. "Yeah, it did. And when I came back, truth?" She nodded. "A part of me wanted you to blow the funeral off." Leah nodded. "A part of me wanted to blow it off too," she said coldly. "And a part of me wishes that I would have never brought Jude with me. But I am a single parent and I don't have the luxury of massive amounts of childcare. But you do know, Leah, and I can sit there and analyze the past." "There is no analyzing it, Sam. You cheated on me because your biology told you to. And don't insult me and say you regret it." Sam looked at her for a second time. "I regret hurting you," he said quietly. "And you're right, I didn't. I should have said sorry. I should have said sorry, and I am, Leah, I am so sorry that I hurt you. I am sorry that you felt like I had to go through the pregnancy alone. I am sorry that Jude missed some moments of his life no matter how early they were with me. I am sorry. But I am not sorry for Emily, I'm just not. It was going to happen eventually. Perhaps the best thing is to accept that That what? We weren't married or that I wasn't pregnant when you met her. Would you have Christ Sam, would you have left me when I was pregnant for her? Would you have still gone after her even if we were married? Yes, she didn't know if that hurt or not. To be honest, she felt nothing but disgust, that she said, looking out over the waves and wanting to wound. Makes you more like your father than anything you have ever done before. Sam sighed, but he didn't say anything. She risked a look at him and saw that he was shaking slightly. His eyes were closed and she watched. Once upon a time she would have taken a great deal of pleasure in poking the angry werewolf, but she was not going to. One look at Emily was all the reason why you shouldn't do that, so she said finally. Here we are. Both of us tied down to this fucking tribe. Honestly, if you have any cigarettes on you, now would be a great time to cough one up. Sam's jaw flickered upwards in what might have been a smile, but then he was frowning again. I don't want you to go. Are you going to stop me? I thought about it, Sam said casually. I really did think about it, but then Seth kinda yelled at me. Seth? Oh, he's not my biggest fan. Never has been the biggest fan of me since, and he told me to not be the parent that made their kids spend time with him. I don't want Jude to grow up to hate me. I also don't want him to grow up and think I abandoned him. Emily and I want a family. He's a part of that, but I couldn't tell you what to do when we were together, so I can't order you to stay. I can't order Embry to not tell his mother about what he is, or to ask about my dad, or Jake to stay away from Bella. All of the orders I have given so far have been ignored. I don't see why you should be any different. So then what is this? This is me, I don't know, compromising, I guess. There is something big on the horizon, something coming. The Cullens are back, and that isn't going to help. The more they stay, the more that we are going to be here. It's a vicious circle. They are here, we trigger each other. Leah didn't know what that meant, and Bella Swan, according to Jacob, wants to be one of them. Oh, that negates the treaty. Please, she scoffed. All of our treaties were written by men. Your point? Bella Swan's body, Bella Swan's choice. Sam shook his head. That is an overcomplicated way of putting it, and she didn't think he was getting it either. I don't want my son growing up thinking the way I did about my father, Sam said finally. And I don't want you to hate me for the rest of your life either. I know this might be a patronizing thing for you to hear, but I really do want you to be happy, Leah. I don't know why it has to be with Embry, but that's what they call the great question. Embry and I aren't a thing. Sam turned to look at her, and there was surprise on his face. Oh? No, it's not gonna work, I don't think. Why? You don't get to ask that question. He opened his mouth and she could see that he was still the same Sam underneath, still has the same desire to know everything that he had always done. She ignored him. Life was complicated enough, and her relationship with Embry was just one part of it, and she did not want to go into how much she So can I have it then? What? Access? Leah closed her eyes. Trust Sam to miss the point. You know, when you talk like this, I really do wonder what on earth I ever saw in you. He smiled, and this time there was humor in it. So, I said you could have access, and I meant it. We just have to figure out how it's going to work going forwards. Sam nodded, and she saw the shudder leave him. Thanks, Leah, he said, and she realized then how afraid he had been of this conversation going against him. It was both terribly sad to see the damage inflicted on him by his father, and rather amusing to realize she had that kind of power. But she looked at Sam and she could see the shine off him, and she knew there and then that she wasn't lying when she said that she didn't know what she had seen in him. She didn't, but she did know one thing. Co-parents they might be, but in the relationship department, Emily was welcome to him. Leah does some more thinking and makes a decision. Sam continued to look out over the cliff for a second, and then he turned around and started walking back to the main road, and Leah followed him. You know, I had no idea he was my brother, he said, finally towing a pebble. Embry. God, when had she become Sam's therapist? But despite that rather butter thought, she had to admit that she was intrigued by what had happened. She was genuinely curious to see what had taken place between the two of them when Sam had found out that his father's bastard was 3 doors down from him. Oh? I mean, I knew that it was a possibility, but the truth was I just didn't. I mean, he was friends with Jake for so long. Billy took him under his wing. I just assumed it was him. My mom, well, she still doesn't believe it now, and it's not like I can tell her how I know, you know? So how did he take it? He was calmer than me. I wasn't happy. I mean, the old man is just the gift that keeps on giving, you know. I don't even get why she brought him here. Joshua wasn't around back then either.
Embry speak to him?
No.
I don't know, he said with a shrug. I don't know if I want to know if he does. Supposing Joshua actually speaks to this son.
Leah personally thought there was more of a chance of her getting back with Sam than that happening. Joshua Ulley had not really striven himself to be involved in one son's life. She didn't know why he would bother with the other. And Sam seemed to be safe in assuming that he did not know, and the truth was that he was probably wrong on that. Leah wouldn't put it past Embry's mother to be the catalyst for the coward leaving. No wonder Dorothy didn't like her.
Doormat,
she sighed as they walked.
Can I ask a question? Are you really asking me?
Chuche, she said with a flicker of a smile. What? What is this thing that Bella Swan is doing that seems to have so many men's panties in a twist? Sam's face darkened, and then, she's making a terrible mistake, and that means she is dating Edward Cullen. Leah strove to remember what the hell it was with this tribe and the Cullens. She had grown up at her father's knee with the town histories, but in truth she had not really believed them until now when she had, and so she had not really remembered them. Having a small child and doing it all on your own made it so that only important things stayed in your brain, the rest disappeared over time, and she was glad of it. Okay, Edward Cullen is a vampire. Leah nodded. In truth, she was not sure what she was supposed to do with that information, and she was not going to show any kind of reaction to Sam on a point of pride. He looked at her as if he didn't understand why she didn't get it, which she thought a bit rich, to be honest. She was dating him before she knew, and then she found out, and then he left and came back, and she took him back, and now according to Jacob she has plans to be one of them. She wants to be with him forever, and that means that he has to bite her and be with her. Leah nodded.
Okay, so that means she wants to be a vampire?
Yes. He was still looking at her as if he did not know why she wasn't bothered by this. In truth she was, but at the same time, the tribe cannot allow that to happen. And there it was.
And what are you going to do to stop it? Destroy them?
She laughed out loud. She really couldn't help herself, but fucking hell, it was so Sam it was almost funny. Never mind that it was so like a man that of course this was the only option that was being presented to them.
So does she know what she is doing?
Yes?
Is she aware of the facts?
I assume that once you do this there is no going back.
She knows. And she knows what she is giving up to be with him?
Jacob says yes, but Leah, then what the fuck has it got to do with you? It stopped him dead. The treaty. Oh, stop sounding like a broken record, she snapped. That treaty with the Cullens was written by 3 men nearly 60 years ago when there was nothing but men on the council. It never occurred to your grandfather or to mine that a woman had a voice, that a woman had a chance or a choice. A woman's right to choose Sam didn't exist. Hell, we didn't. Levi was probably too busy trying to stop his children from being snatched and sent to reform schools, and there is a story that would have been fun to explain, but the point is if she knows what she is doing and they are prepared to keep her away from innocent humans, then what the hell do you lot have to do with it? Her body, her choice. Samuel, she patted him on the cheek. I know it's a hard concept for a man to understand, just look at what is happening in Washington, but that is what it is.
You agree with her?
God no. But we all make choices. She is 1 year younger than I am and I have a baby. And a lot of women in my shoes wouldn't have made the same choice that I did. I wouldn't make the same choice she is making. But she has a choice. If she wants to piss away being human, then by all means let her. Stop losing sleep over what women do, Sam. Sam stared at her. The tribe. Oh, go on, she said, laughing and knowing that she was winding him up and not really caring about the consequences. Go on, cling to that one. 3 old men sitting round a campfire does not the voice of this tribe make. We tell the 3 old coots they have power when in fact we are all just waiting for them to die, and you know it. They tried to stop Rebecca Black from leaving, do you remember? Rachel Black from leaving, me from leaving with your son? Doesn't change the fact that the 3 of us will walk out of here with our heads held high. And you know why? 'Cause this isn't 1923, my friend. I don't believe that it is that simple for you. Oh please, she said, shaking her head. Emily was on the porch watching them again. Go back to your demure housewife and bitch, Sam. One of the perks of not being in a relationship with you is that I don't have to hear about how outdated your views are. And then she was gone. What about, when I'm ready I will call you, she said, and then she was slamming the door to the car shut and she was out of there before he could get that. While she had told him he could have access, she had not told him when he could have access. It was a delicious kind of revenge, she thought. Not best served cold. Best served delicious. But as she drove, she got to the main highway and fired off a text asking her mom if she would be okay to have Jude a little bit longer. There was something that she had to do. As she sat there fiddling with the phone while the reply slipped through, she found that she was staring at the ocean and thinking, she didn't want this, she didn't want Sam, she didn't want this tribe, but she did want one part of it. And it didn't matter that it was predestined. There had been one person in this entire fucked up place that had made her feel like she was an actual human being the entire time she had been here. Who had been in her corner? Who had by all accounts loved her before he had ever become a werewolf? What was it that he had said? I will go, but how you are feeling now is how I have been feeling for years, not about the shit going on outside but about you. I have liked you since I was a teenager whose balls hadn't dropped. I have loved you since you came back, and I know that I will go on loving you until the day I die. And I can die, Leah, I can give this up, it just takes time. And I will always be here when you're ready. I will go now if I have to, but I will always be here when you're ready for me. So you call me. 'Cause you never find me shacked up with someone else as long as you walk the earth. Yeah, that was some declaration, and she knew that he meant every word. It was time, she thought, to stop struggling and fighting against it and learn how to trust. It was time to trust. It was time she had the sense to trust. Embry, she thought, and then she turned the car around and she sped back into the bowls of La Push. One quick phone call to Seth got Embry's address, not that she didn't remember it, but it was always good to check. Seth didn't ask why she was calling, but he did ask if Jude could have ice cream, and his tone told Leah that Seth had been feeding him ice cream for a long time before someone, no doubt her mother, had asked whether or not Leah had said yes. Honestly, Seth had seemed to take it to heart to be the cool uncle. God help her when Jude got old enough to do real damage. She wouldn't put it past Seth to buy him a motorbike. Well, if her mother got wind of it, she might stop him. Sue Clearwater had rules: no drink, no drugs, no motorbike, or you felt the wrath of the wooden spoon. She hung up on her brother and stopped at the house and got out. It was hidden away, nestled in the trees, a little ramshackle thing that a child might draw. It was charming in its own way, and the lack of car told her that Miss Call was out to work. The door opened as she stepped out, and there was Embry looking at her. Embry, Leah. His expression was unreadable, his eyes guarded. He looked exhausted, and suddenly she didn't care. She put one booted foot on the steps and then another, and then she was on the porch with him. I changed my mind. What happened? Nothing. Went to see Sam. Aha, his expression was almost darkly amused. What happened there? Nothing. We agreed to share access. I didn't tell him that I will keep custody, but he will get visitation rights. Then we got into an argument about Bella Swan and a woman's right to choose. Embry laughed, an abortive sound as if it escaped him before he could stop it. He turned to look at her, and his eyes were very warm. There was a depth of longing there and a depth of loneliness that she wanted to take from his eyes. So you came here? I changed my mind. I want you. He looked at her for a long time. You do? She nodded, hating that his question came out slightly disbelievingly. I dob you, Embry, you gotta understand that I live my life my way, you know this isn't going to be me staying here. I cannot do that. I can't live here for the rest of my life. Embry turned to look at her. Okay. I hear Hawaii is nice and sunny. She stared at him disbelievingly, and then, oh, to hell with it, and then her mouth was on his and she was kissing him, and then Embry picked her up in his arms as if she weighed nothing, which she most certainly did not, and he was taking her back into the empty house and up the stairs to his bedroom, which was bigger than most, down onto the double bed and into a world of pleasure she had never before known. Embry and Leah talk about what their future looks like going forwards. He didn't think he had ever loved a woman more. He really didn't. He had been obsessed with Leah Clearwater as a horny teenager, and she being arguably the hottest girl that he had ever seen in his life. He had been obsessed with her when he had his first wet dream, and she had cropped up, usually wearing red underwear. Shoot him, he was a teenager back then. But the point is that she was now in his arms, the object of his obsession. And the obsession had now become a full-on addiction. Seriously, Leah Clearwater. Embry Call's own personal brand of heroin. He ran his fingertips down the side of her ribs and then dusted them across the side and down again as she stretched out next to him in the bed. She was watching the ceiling and he was watching her. Disappointed? She turned to look at him. No, she said simply. Just happy. Embry tried not to let his ego swell, but it was hard, to be honest. It was hard not to let any part of him swell at that. There was a part of him that was dancing the conga at this. That's good, he said, curling one arm around her stomach. I like you happy.
It suits you. She laughed and then she turned onto her side and he drew her close to him. The constant heated temperature that he ran at made her sigh and he grinned as he watched the goosebumps on her arms. He kissed the top of her head and tangled their legs together and knew that this was the happiest that he had been. Even knowing the reason why Jake and Quill had suddenly ignored him didn't compare to this. Finding out what he was had come with the bombshell that he was Sam's half-brother. This was a moment of happiness entirely of his own making. He sighs as Leah tilted her head upwards and looks at him, resting her head on his chest. Good? He asked and she smirked at him. Better than Sam? She rolled her eyes but grinned at him and she moved her hips so that everything worked against each other and Embry groaned. Fuck, this was almost too addictive. He stuck his hand under his head and she smiled at him. Better, she said wickedly. Trust me, you know he's gonna know that. When we transform we share thoughts. Leah stared at him and then, you know, a part of me thinks that's really disturbing and another part of me really thinks that's cool. I prefer the cool one, he says, and she laughs. Do me a favor? Don't let Sam know that I want him to see this. She turned and then slowly she sat astride him. Embry looked at her and knew that this was the best moment of his life. Leah Clearwater, naked, sat astride him looking down at him with that slow, secretive smile. He was still not sure that this was not a dream, and if it was, then he really, really did not want to wake up. Leah looked down at him for a second and then she smiled again, the mischief in her eyes. It was like the years had been stripped away, the pain and the anger that Sam had put her through, and she was simply smiling. Embry ran a hand up and down her thigh and then slowly let her get to work. She was his and he was hers, and she was his to command. She owned him heart, soul and body and mind. And if she just wanted to use him for his body, then she could have it. She could have whatever she wanted out of him. He was everything with her and nothing without her. That was reality. He leaned back and watched her take her pleasure from him and he responded in kind. This was happiness. Hell, this was heaven. Sated, sore, completely in love, he realized they had been in bed most of the day. In between sex and sleeping they had wasted away most of the day, and it was best way to do it. He had not looked at his phone, not bothered to look at the eventually hunger one out. They left the bed and he managed to find some eggs and some bread and bacon. Leah cooked, which in hindsight was good because the food was actually good for a change. His mother was by her chaotic nature very eccentric in the kitchen, and she believed in spice and in liberal amounts. Leah cooked good and with more butter, and Embry, looking at her in a t-shirt and his boxers pottering around his kitchen, found that he wanted this the rest of his life. It was still so surreal. Still so bizarre to think that this was happening. To think that this was the best thing that had ever happened to him. That this was happening right here and right now. Leah poked at her eggs for a second and then, "Can we talk?" And just like that the good mood evaporated. Embry might not have many of these lovely moments under his belt, but he was seasoned enough to know that those words coming out of a woman's mouth was never a good thing. About? Leah put down her fork and looked at him. You get I come with strings attached? If you mean your son, yes, I think I have noticed him, Embry deadpanned. The look on her face showed that she was not amused by it. Yes, and it's something you should think about. Thought about it a long time ago, he said, digging his toast into his egg and then putting bacon on it. He folded it in half and made a sandwich and stuffed it in his mouth in one go, nearly choking with laughter as he saw her scandalized look. Embry, it's complicated. I have a child with your half-brother, who is very vocal about being in his son's life. And it's hard. Being a parent is hard. He's a great boy, but he's a hard boy and he does come first. Imprint or not, Embry looked at her. I know, he said flatly. Leah, I know this. I told you I was in this. The one thing Sam and I have in common is that we both know what it's like to not have a strong male influence in our lives. And while I know Sam is his dad, I am in this as his uncle and stepdad. Oh, that's not a confusing picture, she said, rolling her eyes. But I get the point. She looked at her eggs for a second and then there is Sam. Sam isn't a problem for me. Embry, Leah. Sam and I, he trailed off. There was too much complicated pinning down the relationship between him and Sam, and the number one reason ultimately was that they were both mama's boys. Sam loved his mother and thought she could do no wrong. Embry knew his mother was human but loved her nonetheless. They had been raised by them when their father had walked out, and while Sam had been given looks of pity, Embry had been given looks of scorn. For all the reasoning behind it, this was still a small backwoods town and people were judgmental. He had grown up with the label bastard and his mother had had the label whore. And then there was Leah. There was an inevitability between the two of them. Sam had been Leah's first love. Embry intended to be her last. Sam and I are not a problem. Not for me. If he wants to make a problem, then that on him. Leah looked at him flatly. I don't want to be the cause of you and Sam not developing a relationship further on down the line, she said carefully. If that was going to happen, I think it would have happened by now, he said quietly. I don't mourn what I could have had. Would it have been nice to have an older brother? Yeah. But the truth is that Jake and Quill are more my brothers than Sam, and Jared and Paul are more Sam's brothers than me. That's just the way of the game. Leah looked at him as if she was trying to figure it out, and then, you know, you can get to the big one, he said carefully, looking at the table. The big reason why, it's not like I don't know what it is. For a second there was a pause, and then, I don't want to live here, Embry. I know that. I am going to go back to Hawaii. I know. And I am going to build a life there with my son. I know that too. I only want to come back here when I have to. Leah, he said, looking at her. I know all of this, I do. I knew you weren't going to rent a little house and stay here, I knew it. I gave it some thought and it's fine. Embry, you have this life here, you have a life here, and this thing that you turn into, and I can stop. And if there are vampires, honey, I won't be around to see them around. Look, he leaned forwards. Leah, there are not massive amounts of vampires in the world. The Cullen are an odd bunch because they stick together. From what Jay got from Bella Swan, it turns out most of them are nomads. And this Seattle thing, this is different. This doesn't happen very often, even I know that much. There are more of them gathering together and they feed off humans. The Cullens don't do that. The point is, the Cullens can't stick around in more than one place because they are wired. Eventually they move on, and when they move on, the threats move on too. This only happened because they came back. Leah looked at him for a second and then, and you would leave here and go with me? If you had tickets right now, I would ask for 10 minutes to pack, he said flatly, looking her in the eye. This is your home. It's not really. Leah, my mom came here to chase down a man who was never here. It's my home in the sense that I live here. She's not happy here either. Hawaii, here I come. She looked at him evenly. You know, Embry said, looking evenly at her back. You can accept that you can have good things, you know. Emily doesn't get to steal this happy ending from you. Forgive me, but she stole the last. So to speak. Yeah, well, Emily is the furthest thing away from my type. And your type is? You. He leaned forwards. It was always you. It was you before I was a wolf. It was you before I imprinted. This just confirmed what I already knew. I knew I was yours, the imprinting just made it official. She looked at him again and then she looked away, blinking rather hard, and then, I won't be easy. Best things in life never are. I mean it, Embry, I am not. If Sam told you shit like that, I will rip his face off, he said flatly. Leah flashed him a grin and then she ran her nail across the wood of his kitchen table for a moment and, you can't, Embry, I won't survive you jerking me around, she said flatly. If you're in, you know? You're in. There was a pause as Leah looked at him and Embry knew that this was it. He pushed back the chair and went to her side and he took her hand and placed it over his chest where his heart was. I am in, he said, and he meant every word. He caught her eyes and he held her gaze as steadily as he could. I am in, he said again. I am in with you, Leah. I am not going to leave. I am not going to run away. I am not going to betray you. I will never look at another woman but you. I will do my best to never hurt you. I will certainly never betray you. Leah looked at him, her eyes overbright, and then slowly she smiled and it was like the sun coming out from behind a cloud. Okay then, she said quietly. Embry looked at her and she nodded. Okay, she said, and then she was off her chair and into his arms, and Embry didn't care that he was sat on his kitchen floor. All he cared about the woman in his arms who was finally choosing to believe that someone loved her. She had him now, and he would not ever let her down. Embry and Leah are in their own little bubble, however Bella Swan, the newborn vampires, and the Cullens might just be about to rain on the parade. Embry pulled himself away from her in silence. Leah was half asleep, Jude next to her, and he bent his head to kiss the top of her head, and he found his shorts and his shoes and bent to run a little hand down Jude's face, and then he was gone. He was halfway down the stairs and just wondering if he should dare to try his luck with the coffee, and morning, he nearly fell down the last 2 stairs. Seth was stood at the kitchen door leaning on it like some 80s pop star and watching him with a coffee and a bread roll in his hand. Embry hated him. Also, he was hungry. Leah found this place that does fresh bread, Seth said conversationally. This one has olives in it, which shouldn't work, but it does. You want some and some coffee? Sure. Seth nodded. Mom is out, he said cheerfully. Which is good because it was only me that got a play-by-play version of what was happening. And by the way, I never need to know that you had a hair-pulling kink. I really did not need to know. And I never needed to know that my sister likes it right there. Embry felt his cheeks glow. Aha, and for the record you will make it up for me by covering my next 2 midnight shifts. Fair enough. Seth dunked his bread into the butter and then ran it across the top in a smearing kind of fashion. Embry tried not to look disgusted by such things. Seth, for the record, Seth said, and his tone was serious this time. She's my big sister. And she acts tough because she has to be tough because that's the way our father raised us. She didn't have a cuddly childhood, neither one of us did, but Leah? My dad at the age of 6 was drilling into her that people don't care what happens to girls that go missing on the res and all that shit, so she acts like she's tough but she isn't. She acts like she is Teflon but she's not. And Sam took huge chunks out of my sister, and if he had his way he would still be doing it. So it has to be said, Embry, if you hurt her, there will not be an alpha command that will stop me from ripping your throat out with my teeth, you feel me? Embry looked at his half of bread and then nods. Fair enough. You know you should go and straighten this shit out with your half-brother too. Oh please? I know you're not going to do that, Seth said with an eye roll. But that doesn't change the fact that you should. Especially with this newborn shit going around. What newborn shit? Seth sighed. Oh, he said heavily. I forgot. You weren't at that party. As it turned out, that the newborn shit was very real shit indeed. So let me get this straight. Edward Cullen killed some vampire obsessed with Bella Swan last year, and now his lover has amassed a newborn army of mindless blood-sucking vampires to come and attack said human and the Cullens by turning a load of innocent kids into vampires because in the first 3 months of their new lives they are totally insane. And in doing so they have ripped Seattle apart and killed God only knows hundreds of innocent people. See, Seth said sagely. This is what happens when you don't go to parties. According to the doc, the newborns are the worst when they are in the prime of this life. Their human blood runs alongside vampire tissue. Actually, it's kinda fascinating. He was very open with what he knows it was. Seth, oh okay, yeah, the point is that the vampires have a kind of royalty. A government of such called the Volturi, and the Volturi usually come in to deal with this kind of shit. Why? Well, what would you do if you saw Edward Cullen walking down the street lifting cards above his head and sparkling in the sun? Embry conceded the point. So now of course there is a debate on why these vamps haven't stepped in. But it's coming down to they are coming here, for Bella, and we have to stop them. We? Sam agreed last night. We can't have a load of vamps this close to La Push. Embry thought of Leah, he thought of Jude, and he agreed. Seth, you know this might be my last hurrah? Figured as much, Seth said easily. Tell Sam anyway. Why, so he can have me arrested for custodial interference? No, Seth said with a dignity totally out of line for someone his age. Because in his own way he does care about you and he doesn't want you dead. And because the two of you are going to be in each other's lives, and that boy cannot look to me for a good role model. Seriously, Embry, it just no. Embry sighed. Damn, he hated when Seth was right. Emily opened the door. Hello, Embry. Hey, Em, how have you been? Good as Sam about? She smiled at him, and wow, this was hard. Emily had been the woman who had fed him, had made sure that he did his homework, had been a second mom to all of them. She was also the one who had broken his imprint's heart, and it was terribly awkward now. He's watching the game. Ah, okay. Come in, Embry. He nodded and then he followed her in. Sam was watching the game, but there was no way that he didn't know that it was him at the door. For a second their eyes met, and then, hello, hey, where have you been? Busy, with Leah. It was said as a statement and not as a question, which was fine because, to be honest, he was not sure he was going to be able to give a straight answer that didn't make him out to be a dick. Yes. Sam looked at him from the side and then, oh. Embry sat down and Emily shut the door, muttering about coffee. She's going to leave, he said finally. And I am going to go with her. Sam muted the TV. Really? Yes. You think you can do that? I think if you could stop me being a part of your ex's life, you would have found a way to do it by now. You can't order another wolf to not be in his imprint's life. As it happens, my imprint has your child. It's just one of those things. Sam turned to look at him for a long heartbeat of a second and then, it's not as easy as it looks, he said finally. You think that you can stop being what you are, and that is fine in itself, but you can't. I tried. Look what happened. I am not you, Embry said quietly.
It is entirely possible for me to stop. It is entirely possible for me that she is enough. Sam's mouth twisted for a second as if he was bitterly amused by something. Embry didn't understand and he didn't want to. Already he was having a hard time trying to understand his half-brother and this was not helping at all. I don't get you, he said finally. You act like I've hurt you somehow. Sam nodded. Yeah, well, he was silent for a second and then. I think I knew all along. Knew what? About your mom and dad. When I was 5 she showed up here. I remember a woman. I don't remember the face, I remember her being pregnant. I remember her sitting on the couch. I was sick and I came down for water and she got it for me. I thought it was Mom. I asked her the next day where the belly went. He laughed. That night she confronted him and he left. And then I didn't see him for 12 years, so you should get an idea about how that went. But I knew he had someone else. And you know I don't blame your mom per se. I could but she was 17 and I was all for getting married at 17. I was in love with the idea of being in love. It never occurred to me that she had swallowed the bull hook, line and sinker. Embry nodded. I think, Sam, you're always gonna have your mom's back and I am always gonna have mine. That's the price that we pay for being raised by single moms. We don't get the luxury of having another side to fight. Sam sighed. God, I wish the fucker would just die. I have never known a man who causes this kind of shit even when he isn't here. Embry snorted. He was not sure whether or not he wanted to laugh or not. Look, Sam said finally. I've not been the best man I could be. I know that you think it ironic, but I do regret hurting Leah. I do regret how I've behaved. I think I was so scared of turning into him that I actually did turn into him for a second. I know she has to have a life beyond here. I get that. I get that you and her are a thing as much as Emily and me are a thing. I get imprinting. This has been hard. Because a part of you wants her to still be in love with you. Sam paused, clearly thinking, and then he shrugged. I love Emily, he said, and there was a depth of feeling in there, and then he shook his head. I love Emily and I loved Leah, and it's not as black and white as books make out. And you are my little brother, and I see the life that we could have had, and I see the moments that we could have shared, and I know the blame for that lies at my mother's door and not yours. Embry nodded. He didn't know what else to say. We could, if you wanted, do a new day and a new beginning, he said finally. Sam looked at him and, I don't want you calling yourself his dad. I am sorry, it's raw for me. I know I'm not his dad, Sam. Sam shook his head. But if you're there all the time you will be. FaceTime, Embry said flatly. Wonderful thing, Sam, it allows you to video call your kid. Look, she's not shutting the door. I don't want to play dad. I know I am gonna be the cool uncle. I know that. I know why you're hyper fixed on the thing, believe me, I get it. You're not the only one our father abandoned. He didn't leave your house to join ours, and you might have got the pitying looks, but I got the scorn. Sam looked down at his hands. So maybe we both try and be better? He said finally. Better for Jude, cause I am his dad and you are the man his mother has chosen to be with, and we are related and have this thing between us. We are half brothers, but we are also wolves, and it's one day I hope it won't be a thing, but at the same time a part of me thinks it will be as well. Because the Cullens Bella Swan, there is this door open now and I don't know how you close it. Embry had to concede that there was a point there. So new day, new beginning, he said, nodding his head. And we kill some vampires along the way, Sam said, nodding. He turned the game back up as Emily came in with coffee. Embry took his and took a sip and noted she had gotten his order just right. It wasn't the best of times between the two of them, but it was something better than had been before. This desire to be better than the man who had sired them, to be better for the boy they both loved. It was just a shame about those pesky vampires, but those could be dealt with in time. Here's the fanfic ends.